Hello, friends. Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight, boy, do I have something special lined up for you. Because you see, occasionally I'll get emailed an experience story that just doesn't fit neatly into my usual categories. I found the following true experience is shocking and perplexing, even to a guy like me who's very stock in trade as the unusual and the unexplained. So grab your compass and let's ride off the beaten path. Number 1. Hey TB, I just wanted to share something that I experienced in hopes that someone might have an answer for me. I love strange things. I used to do ghost hunts, but I always found some sort of explanation for what I'd seen. Not with this, though. It's been over 20 years since the incident, and I still can't explain it using conventional sense or rational thought, so here goes. I grew up in rural Wisconsin, the kind of place where getting a gallon of milk from the store was a 45-minute affair. My friends and I were 16 and 17 at the time, and so we decided to pass the time by doing what most kids our age did, taking long drives in the country. One Friday night, 5 of us decided to cruise around in my buddy's car. He drove, I sat shotgun, and 3 of our other friends sat in the back seat. I remember the night being really brightly lit by the moon, and because it was spring and the crops hadn't started growing yet, you could see for miles in every direction, especially given how dead flat our area was. Anyway, it's like 10 p.m. We're heading eastbound towards an intersection on one of the country roads when we see headlights from a car heading north towards the same intersection. As we got closer to the intersection, probably a mile or so out, it looks like we're a bit closer to it than this other car. We get to about a half mile out and see that we're definitely closer, so we just keep going. Suddenly, this car guns it like it's trying to beat us there, even though they had a stop sign and we didn't. As we get to the intersection, this car is right there, and its headlights are filling our car with light. You can hear the engine going, and it's clear as day that it's about to T-bone our car's passenger side, where I'm sitting. All 5 of us scream and brace for the impact, and right when it's going to hit us, it just vanishes. We slam on the brakes and all get out of the car, and we're doing the pat ourselves down for damage thing. But the car is just not there. Again, it's bright as hell, and we're surrounded by flat, empty fields. There's absolutely nowhere for this car to have gone without us seeing it. It simply vanished. We have a bit of a freak out and decide to head home for the night. But all 5 of us saw it. We even ask each other Monday at school, like, how did that happen? What's crazy about this, though, is that the following Friday night, my friends decide to go for another drive. I had to work that night, so I couldn't make it, but the rest of them are just cruising the same stretch of country. Except this time, right around 10 p.m., they get broadsided by a drunk driver at the exact same intersection. It's a catastrophic crash. Miraculously, everyone survived, but 2 of my friends needed extensive surgery. One of my friends, the one sitting shotgun, had to relearn how to walk and tie his shoes, and suffered a pretty severe brain injury. Another friend had swelling in his brain that needed surgery but was mostly okay after that. What the hell was it? A time loop? A glitch in the Matrix? Converging realities? Am I actually dead? I've tried and tried, but I've never come up with a rational answer for what happened. Thanks for reading. Signed, Jasper. Number 2. Hi, Biker. Your local lurker here. After spending some time listening to your channel, I feel confident enough to talk about something that happened when I was 15, going on 16. I've spent the majority of my life pushing it away and blaming it on sleep paralysis or the dreams of a hurting teen, but being 24 now, I just can't seem to feel right about those reasonings. To preface this, I'll add context. I've always been sensitive, asking questions no small child should know, predicting people's behaviors and consequently being ignored, only for it to come true later on. Having dreams that end up happening and never having sleep paralysis. But now, on to the actual point of my story. My family had recently inspected a house to move into, and upon stepping onto the threshold, I said, "No, not this one. Absolutely not this one," and refused to enter any further. I sensed danger and waited outside, probably just coming across as a grumpy teenager. We move in anyway, and I finally get my own bedroom, which I was afraid to enter. It just felt wrong, worse than anywhere else in the house, not including the basement anyway. From there, things started to go downhill. My brother, who's on the autism spectrum, can't sleep anymore. Shouts and gets into anxiety-induced frenzies, far more often than he ever did. My mom, who had previously been harsh towards me whenever my brother acted up, started to get even angrier. So angry, in fact, it escalated to physical violence and hours upon hours of screaming, bursting into my room and generally being someone that I couldn't recognize as my own mother anymore. My sister became completely disassociated. She had blamed me for angering my mother, and in turn my brother would join the shouting matches. This never happened previously in our old home, and it coincided when I started waking in the night to see a man standing inside my bedroom by the window. Some say he was the Hatman, but I never saw a hat, and he was always in my room, never on the threshold. And I could always move. I wasn't in a dream state because my coping method was to just roll over when I saw him. I started regularly having to burn sage in my room, and on those nights I'd be able to sleep peacefully. The only saving grace to this entire household was my dear beloved parrot, whom I named Lenzo. He was with me all the time, lived in my room at night, and followed me about on my shoulder. Then there was this lull in activity. I found out my mom had brought a priest into the house, and because she was experiencing a man in her room. It didn't last long. The man came back, and this time when I saw him, he was closer, by the end of my bed rather than the window. So I rolled over and came face to face with the man, looking right into my eyes. He had somehow moved so quickly that when I rolled over, he was able to look me right in the eyes as if to say, "You can't pretend I'm not here." I don't want to describe his face because it'll send me into a panic, and for that I'm sorry. I will say that he has very, very blue eyes. And he did actually speak too, quietly, in a way that felt like I was imagining it or it was in my head. He said to me, "I'm going to kill Lenzo." I couldn't even scream. My voice was gone. However, I pulled the blankets over my head, rolled over, turned on the light, and got out of bed. I immediately started incensing the room and in true Australian fashion, started cussing the entity out of pure rage and fear. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, "Over my dead body, you freak. Show yourself in the light and fight me right here and now." Needless to say, nothing happened to me. I don't want to say any more, but an accident happened. Lenzo's sidebar entrance to his cage, which had always been in perfect working order, had broken off its hinges one day when no one was home, and I returned to find that the neighbor's cat had somehow gotten inside the house. My mother said she never forgot the sound of the screams I made upon seeing what happened. I don't care if none of you believe me, but I refuse to chalk it up to nightmares or sleep paralysis. There's more to the goings-on here, but I don't know if any of you would like part 2. Thanks for reading this far. Please keep the comments respectful. Sincerely, Amanda. Number 3. Dear Tattooed. Okay, this one is a doozy. Apologies if I get things wrong grammatically, as I'm extremely paranoid at the moment. I live in the UK, Devon to be precise, with my dog. It's important to note that there's a huge expanse of woods behind this house. Early last month, this thing that looks and sounds exactly like me begun to show itself directly to me. But I fear it's actually been around for much, much longer. About 4 years ago, my parents, grandmother, and cousins were over at my house for a get-together. I remember my mother going to smoke around the back. Not even a minute after going out, she comes back in, all flustered, asking me why I was outside in the woods. She said I was staring at her. The thing is, I wasn't. I was inside with my grandmother and dad. My mom, bless her soul, passed it off as just seeing things, and stupidly, so did I. Cut to last year, I was in my lounge when my dog ran off into the conservatory, barking like mad. This wasn't really surprising, as we do have quite a few rabbits and other vermin in the area. That was till, I kid you not, I heard my own voice talking in the conservatory. I checked outside, nothing at all. Last month, while cleaning the kitchen, I saw me outside in the woods. It looked exactly like me. This thing didn't move an inch. It was like a statue. I, too, froze in place. I guess it was more the shock of seeing myself with my own two eyes. I leapt over to the conservatory door, and gone. It was simply gone. In the split second it took me to get to the door, this thing had simply vanished. Last Saturday, I was upstairs on a work assignment when I heard my own voice asking to be let in. My dog was going nuts, and got worse when this thing started clawing and scratching at my windows and door. I contacted the police, and I'm away at my parents' house for the time being. I don't know what to tell people, or if even they'll believe me if I did. I just want this to end. Any advice, because I'm dreading when I see this thing again or what it might do. Thanks for reading. Signed, Anonymous. Number 4. Dear Tattooed Biker, I'm an avid hiker and camper. Always have been. I recently had something unexplained and terrifying happen to me on one of my outings. On this particular trip, I decided to hike the Old Malala Indian Trail and followed the ridgetops from Saddle Blanket Mountain to Oak Ridge in Oregon, one of the Native Americans' favorite trading centers. It was a beautiful August day. 2 days into the hike, I'd expected to be gone about 2 weeks, when literally, out of the blue, the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me in my life occurred. It would change my perspective of reality forever. I was walking along the trail, just enjoying the strong breeze and bright sunshine when, in the middle of a step, everything around me started to turn gray and blurry. The only way I can describe it was as if suddenly I was looking through someone else's prescription sunglasses. I finished the step and started another. Every inch I moved forward, the darkness increased, and the gray blurring turned into a jumble of shapes that made no sense. I then seemed to pass a barrier, and everything started to return back into focus when my foot reached the ground. On the second step, everything around me had changed. Day had turned into night, and there was no wind. All the Douglas fir and pine trees had been replaced with thick, jungle-like growth. The cool, thin mountain air was replaced with humid, thick air. There were no stars in the sky, but there was a diffused light that let me see everything clearly. However, I couldn't tell what the light source was. As often happens when the human body receives a massive dose of adrenaline, the entire incident appeared like it was in slow motion, and even though I was only there for a second or two, I had time to observe my surroundings. The silence was broken by continuous, high-pitched screaming sound, and I was completely overwhelmed with a sense of fear and danger. My momentum caused me to take one more step before stopping in my tracks. It was at this point I heard a whispered, "Gotcha," over my right shoulder. I couldn't tell if I heard it with my ears or just inside my head. The word wasn't directed at me, but something said the word quietly to itself. I was so terrified that I actually felt my heart stop for a moment. That whispered word is what saved me. I opened my mouth and gasped in a huge gush of thick air and recoiled backwards in the same footsteps I'd entered wherever I was. As I threw myself backwards, I looked over my right shoulder. A dark-colored, hairy right hand and arm were reaching for my throat over my shoulder. The hand had pale, ivory spade-shaped fingernails. The nails looked very clean and almost had a manicured look to them. The thumb was placed lower towards the wrist on the hand than a human's would be. Both hands and arms were thin and powerful looking, and both were covered with a thick, coarse black hair. I got a good look at it because the thumbnail grazed my neck as I moved backwards. As I continued backwards, the hand clutched where my neck had been a split second before, and it seemed to fade off into the distance as I returned through the portal or whatever it was. I took 2 more steps backwards, and everything reversed itself from what had just happened. The world around me became lighter. The fir and pines gradually came back into view, and by the 3rd step I was back on Saddle Blanket Mountain. I continued to move backwards in terror, and as I did I observed that where I had just come from, there was a shimmering oval patch of air, about the size of a large door. The woods behind it looked like they were underwater. By the 5th backward step, the shimmering area just seemed to evaporate, and then everything was back to normal. By then, my lungs had nearly burst from the volume of air that I had inhaled during the huge gasp. My body felt like it was on fire from the adrenaline surge. I spun around and ran back down the trail, just as fast as my legs could carry me, and I didn't stop until I reached my truck. It had taken nearly 2 days to get to that place, and only about 3 hours to get back. On my way home, I was absolutely horrified at the thought of what would happen if I were to drive my truck into something like that. It had been a trap, pure and simple. Whatever it was that tried to kill me somehow kept the portal hidden from me on the way in, and I didn't actually see it until I was back out again. I've had terrible nightmares for years and still haven't come to grips with what happened. My fingers are trembling and the hair is standing up on the nape of my neck as I write this. Severely shaken, I've read everything I could get my hands on about people who have mysteriously disappeared throughout history, and discovered several instances where people have vanished in plain sight of others. Makes me wonder if they too stumbled into something like I did, and just never made it out. Thanks so much for letting me share. Signed, Walter. And there they are. 4 of the strangest true stories of the unexplained that I've received in a while. What did you think about these? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments down below, but please keep it respectful, as the experiencers may very well read them looking for answers. Also, my friend Kitty has started a new channel and is moving all her content over to that one. I've left a link to it down in the pinned comment. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. And as always, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.